Iran's new hardline conservative president, Ibrahim Raisi, held his first press conference today following his win in Friday's election. Raisi will become the first Iranian president to be sanctioned by the United States before he actually takes office. Israel's new prime minister, Naftali Bennett, warned that Raisi's win was, quote, the last chance for world powers to wake up before returning to the nuclear agreement. White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan addressed what the result means for those nuclear negotiations.
The ultimate decision for whether or not to go back into the deal lies with Iran's supreme leader. And he was the same person before this election as he is after the election. So ultimately, it lies with him and his decision as to whether he wants to go down the path of diplomacy here or face mounting pressure not just from the United States, but from the rest of the international community.
All right, joining me now, NBC News' Tehran bureau chief Ali Arouzi, and joining us from Tel Aviv in Israel, NBC News foreign correspondent Raf Sanchez. Ali, I'll begin with you. You had the opportunity today to attend President-elect Raisi's press conference. Give us the general gist of what he had to say in the tone of his incoming administration.
Hey, Eamon. Well, his tone was much more austere, and that came across very clearly in the press conference. He showed very little interest in having normal relations with the United States. I asked him if all U.S. sanctions need to be removed in order for the JCPOA to work. He said not only do all the sanctions need to be removed, but Iran needs to verify that it's actually working, that there are economic benefits for the country. And he dismissed any notion of meeting with President Joe Biden, even if an agreement was made. He was asked, would you meet Joe Biden? He flatly said no and moved on, which is in stark contrast to his predecessor, President Rouhani, who was the first Iranian president to speak to a U.S. president. He spoke to President Obama after the JCPOA was finalized. He also ruled out any stronger or longer deal with the United States, something that the Biden administration is very keen to extend on. He said that's absolutely not negotiable. But he did say Iran's foreign policy isn't just limited to the JCPOA. He wants to normalize relations with Saudi Arabia and other neighbors within this region. He was also asked about his record at the time when he was judge in the 80s, where he had an alleged role in the extrajudicial killing of thousands of political prisoners. He said at the time he was a jurist and he always defended human rights, adding that U.S. sanctions against him for human rights abuses had been imposed on him for doing his job. But as far as the nuclear deal is concerned, Eamon, I think to extend on Jake Sullivan's point, it's the Supreme Leader's choice. The Supreme Leader wants this to happen, and Raisi is going to follow his cue. And I think what's very evident about that is he's keeping the same negotiating team in place that's there right now, which is an indication that they want to get this deal done sooner rather than later, because it would give an economic boost to the country, and it would also enhance his standings after an election which had a fairly low voter turnout.
Ali, stay with me for a moment. Let's cross over to Israel and see the reaction from there. Raf, what more can you tell us about how this is playing out, the election of Raisi is playing out, and what this means for Israel's efforts to try and basically prevent the return to the JCPOA?
Yeah, Eamon, Israel's new prime minister, Naftali Bennett, like Benjamin Netanyahu before him, takes a hard line on Iran. And he used Raisi's election as an opportunity to say to Western powers, including the United States, that in his words, they need to wake up, that hardliners like Raisi represent the true face of the Iranian regime, and that they cannot be trusted to uphold their end of the nuclear deal, according to Israel. Now, we also heard words of congratulation from across the Middle East, including many of Iran's Arab neighbors, with the notable exception of Saudi Arabia, which is kind of interesting because, as Ali was saying, there has been talk in recent weeks of Saudi Arabia and Iran, these two major regional rivals, perhaps finding a thaw in relations after years and years of tension. Raisi was congratulated by the leaders of Russia and China, and those are two authoritarian regimes that are extremely important for Iran, both of them permanent members of the UN Security Council, also signatories to the Iran nuclear deal. Russia, of course, fighting alongside Iran within Syria on behalf of the Assad regime. And China, one of the only countries in the world prepared to still defy American sanctions and keep buying Iranian oil. So a major lifeline for Tehran. Ayman?
Ali, very quickly, just because we've been tracking the developments inside of Iran regarding its nuclear program, there's been some news regarding Iran's Seoul nuclear power plant. Can you shed any more light on what is going on with that?
Hey, Ayman. Well, initially they said it was an emergency shutdown, but later on this afternoon, officials here have been playing down the importance of the shutdown, saying that it was normal procedure in order to carry out maintenance, repairs, and solve technical issues. But and Bushehr should be offline for about a week till they resolve all those issues. But in reality, Ayman, in this country is experiencing serious power outages, in part because so many bitcoins are being mined here in order to circumvent sanctions, and they don't want to risk an unexpected power outage at the country's main power plant. So that's why it may have been shut down.